I just want to thank everyone for hopping on tonight to talk about flag football. Um, so as you can see, well, first of all, let's start off. My name is Bruce Bach. I'm the Senior Competition Director here at Special Olympics of Pennsylvania. This will be my first flag football webinar and kind of like the first or second round of these webinars that I've done. So bear with me a little bit, but appreciate everyone hopping on and seeing you tonight. We also have joining us tonight is Michelle Boone, who is the Vice President of Sports, as well as Kathy Riley Atkins, who is our flag football sports director. So thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So jumping right into the agenda, just provide an overview of the agenda real quick. One thing that I do want to mention that there is a Q&A down in the chat. You should be able to see that. If you have any questions, if you could drop those into the Q&A.
I think it's just a chat on this webinar, Bruce. It's just the chat. Yep.
Okay. I guess there's two. Okay. All right. So if you see the chat or the Q&A, drop them into there, and we'll try to manage it that way. I see Q&A. I don't see chat, but I could be looking at something different today too. And something cool that we're trying out tonight is we're trying to do. We'll have 2 polls. So you guys will be our guinea pigs tonight. So we'll see how that goes tonight. Michelle, take us through some of the housekeeping. Some of the things you should be familiar with, but again, as always, it's good to get a refresher with some of that information in there as far as Visa goes and how we communicate and things like that. We'll go over a bunch of some of the sports rules and updates. Fortunately for flag football, there aren't any, but Kathy will talk about that in a little bit. I'll give you a return to activities, like a really high level, very quick return to activities. Hopefully you were able to listen in on our webinar that we held last Thursday for coaches. If you have not, as a reminder, it is on our webpage under the COVID-19 protocols, but we'll show you where that is located in a little bit. There are a lot of resources that we have for coaches on there, but when we get to that slide, we'll be sure to go through that with you. Also, we talking about the virtual sectionals and Fall Fest. So what will sectionals and Fall Fest look like? So we'll talk about that. And Kathy will guide us through the sports guides that we created for the coaches and, how to plan for your practice. What are some of the skills and activities that you can do at practice? And I'll eventually get back on and we'll talk about some of the events that we're going to be offering, whether they're in person or they're going to be virtual. So very exciting stuff coming up. And really the purpose is to get our athletes either back into training on the field and in person or virtually. So with that being said, Michelle, if you don't mind, if you can kick us off and get us started.
All right, awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, and as Bruce said, I'll run through this housekeeping. I'm going to go through it pretty quick because I want to make sure that we've got lots of time to get to some of the specific flag football stuff tonight. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to reach out to me or your local program leadership can help you with most of these things as well. So first is just kind of coaching. So even through all of this, it's important to make sure that if we're in person, we're keeping that 1-to-4 ratio. As always, all of those coaches must be Class A volunteers, anyone who's kind of filling that role within the 1-to-4. We are going to be flexible with coaching certifications this year. So typically we require 1 coach per team. And as you can see down below, kind of moving forward, we're even going to require coaches for individual skills as well. But going into this fall season, we'll be pretty flexible with that. And again, not knowing, who's willing to return, who falls into high risk categories and isn't able to return. So again, if you have any questions about that, but in-person trainings, there will not necessarily need to be a certified coach present. We are, though, offering some virtual certified coach certifications. So if you are on this call for flag football and have not already become certified, great opportunity for you to get that certification without having to come in person. So we're taking kind of a trial run at that this season. Kathy will be the one running that for us. And the date for that is Saturday, August 22nd, and it'll be at 3 o'clock. You do need to go and register for those through your Visas portal. I'll talk about the Visas portal in a little bit. But again, if you have any questions about that, We are limiting, it shouldn't be too much of an issue for flag football, but we are limiting participation on those. So if you are interested, I would suggest that you go and check that out as soon as possible. Like I said, so this will not apply this season necessarily, but just a good reminder moving forward, and again, a good opportunity to get certified virtually, right? But moving forward, once we get back to kind of whatever this new normal is going to look like, there will be a requirement for individual skills. So if any of the teams start doing individual skills in flag football, which we do plan on offering down the line here, there'll need to be one certified coach for that, as well as at least one certified coach per team. It's 25 athletes there, but for flag football, you have smaller rosters than that. So that's that. You can go to the next one, Bruce. The next one's going to be athlete medicals, and this one is pretty important this year. So we recognize that COVID-19 has created issues for athletes getting their medicals updated. In response to this, we're offering a 6-month extension for any medicals that expired from March through July. So March 1st through July 31st. And so the following exceptions are kind of in place for that. So that that athlete hasn't had any major changes in health since their last medical was completed. The athlete has not been infected with COVID. So if they have been infected with COVID, they will need to get a new medical and kind of clearance from their doctor prior to coming back to activities. And that the athlete doesn't experience any of the following symptoms, either at rest or during exercise. So those include difficulty breathing, chest pain, shortness of breath, loss of consciousness, lightheadedness, dizziness, changes in vision, headaches, cough, irregular heartbeats, and just really any other unpleasant physical symptoms. So, and a lot of times you may know athletes that typically have those problems. So, again, anyone outside of those 3 groups will be eligible for that 6-month extension. Just really important to note, as far as coming back for the fall season, our start date is August 1. If there's an athlete that has a medical expiring August 1 or later, they need to have a new medical to be able to participate this season. So again, that extension only goes from March through July 31st. So anyone as of expiring August 1 will need to have a new medical in order to participate. All of the athletes, all of this information has been sent via email to athletes with emails in visas. So I know not all the athletes have an email in visas. So again, just an important thing for you to be communicating out to your team over these next few weeks if you plan on coming back in person. So the next one, Bruce. Just something we always like to cover in this housekeeping portion. Just kind of the delineation of roles in head coach and assistant coaches. And it is important for these roles to be kind of clearly defined. It's the head coach's responsibility to really develop the plans and then delegate duties out to the assistant coaches. And, like any team, your team is more successful if they're working together. This also applies to your coaching team. You're more productive and kind of better off if you're kind of working together and splitting those tasks. So we just put some of the highlights here. We have just recently updated a full position description for both a head coach and assistant coach, which can be found on the website under that resource link. And we will send out this PowerPoint presentation. It'll actually get posted on the sports offered page of the website, so you'll be able to reference this and kind of use those links if you would like. You want to go to the next one? Okay, so just kind of a little bit of a walkthrough of visas, and we're not going to go to the website again just to kind of save time, but super important for you guys to know this is really where you do most things that you need to do nowadays. So again, a lot of the resources are still located on our website, but as far as really signing up or registering for anything, all of that will be done through visas. All of your Class A certifications will be done through visas. So just a really important that if you have not familiarized yourself with this website, that you do so. So again, just talking about training schools, all of the training school registration will need to happen on this site. So they're kind of the 4 bullets under, it's called Training Schools, Webinars, and More tab. There's a sports skills sign up. So that is, you want to sign up for a training school. So if you want to sign up to participate in that virtual flag football training school, you'll click on that. You just search flag football and that date will pop up. You just hit register. The skills training application coach hours. So this is those STA forms. So once you get certified, this is kind of the new process. There's no more paper forms, kind of the new process for going through and submitting your coach hours, which I'll get to in just a second. And then the other two are the level 1 interest forms. So telling us, you know, we're interested in getting a certification in our area. So again, that's happening virtually right now, but moving forward, if you have interest in getting a flag football coach training in your area, you would go and just fill out that interest form. And then the track 2 is our experienced coaches, and that is an application you would need to fill out, just telling us about your experience. So moving on to, you're good on this slide, Bruce, but these STA forms. So like I said, under that training, webinars, and more, you just now click on this sport training application. It'll only come up with kind of that drop-down menu if you have a certification in that sport. So I think just seeing the names here, I think a lot of the people on this call are certified and have probably already done this process. But this just kind of walks you through, and we've got a nice little resource. It's just like a 2-page PDF that has all of this on there as well with the screenshots available under the Visas resources on our website. So if you had any questions, but this is now how you'll submit your hours, and you can choose to submit them all at one time. You can kind of just keep track of them on your own, or you can submit them as you do them. And once you reach those 10 required hours, it'll shoot an email to our staff to go in and approve all of those, or, you know, look at them and then approve them. And then once we do that approval, your record will automatically be updated as a certified coach. So it's nice. We're just trying to streamline the processes a little bit here, make sure these things show up in your record kind of as soon as it can. So I'm going to go to the next one, Bruce. And this was just more, so again, if you were submitting hours kind of as they happen, you can go to the My Information tab, and there's a bullet that says submitted hours. So you can go there and you can look and see what you've submitted. You can delete there and then go fill out new ones if needed. So that is a brand new process, hot off the press. You want to go to the next one?
That's good, because everybody used to lose their pages over the, you know, that.
Yeah, exactly.
Period.
So you can go and just kind of do it as it happens.
Yeah.
You won't lose track of it so much. Class A requirements. So all of the Class A requirements are now completed via the Visas portal. So that includes general orientation, protected behaviors, concussion training. If you are interested in doing Fit 5, that also takes place through here. And all of the initial background clearances. So once you complete that volunteer application, that all gets kind of initiated through Visas as well. So again, really kind of one-stop shopping for all of this stuff, just trying to make it more convenient for you all. All right. Awesome. This is just kind of a snapshot of the SOPA website. So it is still required to take continuing ed. So if you're at a point where you're up to your 3 years that you've had your certification, which some of you might be, we started flag football about that time ago. You know, when better than now to get these done. So there are tons of online courses available. Most of them last about an hour. There are some that are a little bit longer. We're always kind of constantly updating what's available on the website. So if you go to this, you just go to the Volunteer Center. There's one of those gray boxes there, says Coaches Education. You just click on there, and it'll take you to kind of the whole current list. If you have any questions about an allowable continuing education course, you can reach out to either myself or Jennifer Tress. We're the ones that kind of monitor those things. And there are definitely, you know, you guys get out there and you find a lot of different courses. So we're always happy to hear kind of what's out there and what you're utilizing. Add that to the page. All right, next one. Hopefully you're all on this. It's been a pretty successful group for us. So we started a SOPA Coaches Facebook group. It's a closed group, so you just have to ask to join. But if you search SOPA Coaches, we just ask that you answer 2 questions. What local program do you coach for and what sports do you coach? If you don't answer those questions, we usually kick it back to you. We do want to make sure we're limiting this to, people within the state who are actually participating in the program. But we share out a ton of resources, kind of upcoming things. There's been some dialogue back and forth with just people asking questions, how are you doing this? How are you managing this? So I think it's just been a really good tool and resource for some of our coaches across the state. Our Lunch and Learn. So these have been kind of on and off this year, but as I said, kind of living in this virtual world now, we're really looking to bring these back and kind of try to keep them more on track. These are typically held the second Wednesday of every month at noon. They are all recorded. You can access them on our website at any time. Some of them are eligible for continuing education credits. So when you're on the web page, some of them have an asterisk next to them. There's also a quiz that goes along. So after you watch it, we just ask that you take the quiz. And then that is how you will receive credit for that class once we receive your quiz results. So these are just some of the upcoming ones. So we had to push this back in August a little bit because we won't have it done quite in the second week in August. But we'll do, so we'll share some more information on kind of our phase A, which is our virtual at-home training competition. So that'll probably be a pretty big one. We'll definitely look to share that recording out more broadly. We'll utilize that really as kind of our rollout for this whole thing. September 9th, uniform logos and requirements, just something that we always get a lot of questions about. And again, it'll be recorded and on the website if needed. And then October, something that we're really focusing on pushing out with our Unified Champion schools and colleges right now is a program that we've developed called Unified Fitness. It really builds off some of the Fit 5 criteria, which we'll talk about in a second, but can be really useful in a virtual setting as well. So we thought it would be important to kind of roll that out more broadly. All right. Coaches training and progression plan. So this is kind of that gold, silver, bronze. We would love you all to be working towards. I see Amanda Seacrest and Janelle on this one, so shout out. Northampton does an excellent job of kind of participating in this program, and we always like to give them some kudos for that. But we are offering a lot of these courses virtually. So you see in the bronze, doing Fit 5, which can be offered virtually, as well as the Coaching Special Olympics Athletes course. We did offer 2 of those courses. We did one virtual in May and one in June. They went really well, so we will continue to have that as a virtual offering, and Jen will be sharing some of those dates for the upcoming fall. For the silver, so Coaching Unified Sports is currently an online course. There is a small fee to take that. SOPA, we will be running that course as well virtually, along with Principles of Coaching. So I think we're planning to do 1 or 2 Principles of Coaching sessions this fall, and then we'll do some Coaching Unified Sports starting in the winter, early next year. But again, keep your eye out if you're interested in doing those things. I think now is a good time kind of to start to activate on some of those. All right. Fit 5, again, just a reminder, so that is part of the bronze level. And it's really a great addition to your training site, whether you're in person or virtual. It's a very turnkey program. We provide you with an online training, a coaching guide, and all the resources needed to execute this program. You can go to the SOPA website for more information and to sign up. So those links, again, are there for you. Once you sign up, you'll be contacted by a SOPA staff member just to ask some more questions and provide some information. And I think it's a really great opportunity right now to keep the athletes engaged and, striving for common goals, kind of doing something together that will have an end result. So again, if you're not already doing it, I would highly encourage that you think about doing that for this season. And I think this is my last one here. But so USA and World Games, don't know how in the loop you've been, but the 2021 games, which was supposed to be held in Sweden, actually got canceled. The Swedish government pulled out on them, so they were able to kind of regroup. It will now be in Russia, which is kind of exciting, but has been bumped about a year. So it'll now be January of 2022. We do have 8 athletes from SOPA who are planning on attending that. So have been in communication with them, and they are pretty excited. As far as 2022 games, we're getting a lot of questions about this. So the SONA and the local organizing committee are still planning these as per normal. So they're scheduled to be that first week in June in Orlando, utilizing the Worldwide of Sports down at Disney, which would be really, I mean, it should be really cool. It'll be a top class games, I think. The initial qualifying year was supposed to be Fall Fest 2020. We've shifted that to 2021, or for flag football, you know, it would have been this season. We do have a slot for a traditional flag football team to be attending this game. So that is important for you all to know. Coach applications for this, well, that doesn't really apply to flag football because if your team gets selected, those coaches will go. But all those coach applications, if you guys are interested in doing a different sport, will come out this fall. We will also manage kind of a pre-selection questionnaire similar to like we did for the World Games. It'll almost be like a registration process for athletes interested in attending the 2022 USA Games. So this will be something that we'll be sure to share out with all of the program managers, sport and competition directors. It's just going to be really important that we get this information to the athletes. So we will be talking about it over the next few months really as much as possible. And then we will plan to send those out probably like the October timeframe. 2023, they announced that the World Games, the Summer World Games, will be in Berlin, Germany, which again is super excited, but that's really all kind of the news that we have on that game so far. And I think that wraps me up. I will pass it over to Kathy.
Well, that was an easy one. There are no rules changes for 2020. The only rule change that came up most recently was the offsides rule. And a lot of people missed out on this because it's just not something you normally think of. But in competition, you have to have at least 2 athletes that are offsides in order for the referee to call it. Obviously we're not going to be using that this year, but when we get back into competition, that you need to know that could be an issue.
Okay, now we're going to, I'm going to attempt a poll. So now it is poll time. So here's the poll. So I'm not sure what it looks like on your end, but I think you can just click either yes, no, or undecided. So our first poll for the evening is, do you plan to return to in-person activities this fall season? So if you are planning to return to in-person activities this fall, please select yes. If you are not planning to return to in-person, select no. And if you are undecided and not sure about returning to play, select undecided.
So I don't see it on my end, Bruce. Do you guys see it? Kathy, do you see it?
Should be,
Now I do.
Should be up now. Well, we're getting results. This is exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, that's funny, Bruce. I guess because I'm also a host, I don't see it.
Oh, you don't see it now either?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
But that's okay, as long as they do.
Steve,
Yeah,
that
right?
somebody just came in the door behind him, just in case.
4, 6. So we'll have 2 more seconds. Oh, let's see what's.
Do you see Alan's message, Bruce?
No,
He's
don't
not
see
getting the poll.
I wonder why.
All right, trial run here. Alan, if you just want to put in the chat, maybe do you plan on coming back in person? Yes, no, or undecided. That'd be great.
So before I click end poll, just for time's sake here, we have 4 that responded with yes, 2 responded with no, and 2 are undecided. So I'm going to hit end polling and see what it looks like. Okay, so it does come up with a little graph right there. Okay.
Thanks for being our guinea pigs, guys.
Okay, so now I can share the results. So those are the results right there. Okay. All right, that was awesome. So that was our first one. Appreciate everyone. So, and again, so now we'll just talk about the return to activities plan. Just real high level, real high level. It's not letting me click. There we go. So just real high level, I'm hoping you guys were on the coaches call the other night, but if not, again, you can always go back and listen to the webinar from last Thursday on our webpage. But this graph really shows you how the SOPA plan is kind of integrated and in line with the SOI as well as the Pennsylvania state governance. Starting on the left there, SOPA's phase A is really essentially the stay-at-home phase where we're at right now, the virtual phase. No one is actually out in training. With SOI's phase 0, so they're kind of equal right there, and directly in line with the Pennsylvania's yellow and red phase. Just as an FYI, in order for counties to return to activity in person, the county does need to be within the Pennsylvania's green phase. Moving over to the left, SOPA's phase B directly aligns with the SOI phase 1, which is no more than 10 participants at a training site. So when we say participants, we actually mean coaches, athletes, volunteers. If there's any spectators, which hopefully not within 10, because that would take away opportunities from our athletes, but includes everyone who is at your training site. Moving over to the right, SOPA's phase C is that no more than 25 participants. And that's in line with the SOI's phase 2. Moving over to the right, SOPA's phase D is that no more than 50 participants at a training site, which directly corresponds to the SOI phase 2 of no more than 50. Moving over to the right, SOPA's phase E, which is the no more than 150 participants at a training site. We're following the guidelines of the SOI's phase 3. So if you notice that SOPA's phase D and E is grayed out at this time, and that is because this fall season, we will not be allowing any of our training sites to participate within phase D or E. So for this fall, the 3 options would be SOPA phase A, which is the virtual stay at home, phase B, which if you are returning to play, you need to start within phase B, which is the no more than 10, and then go through the registration process if you want to move up to the phase C with the no more than 25 at a training site.
Yeah, and I think just real quick, Bruce, important to note, you need to stay in phase B for 3 weeks, and then you would have the opportunity to move up to phase C. So I know most of your training sites would have more than 10 people. So again, that's kind of the restrictions in the beginning.
I'm going to try to bring up the SOPA website, which has all the information for the COVID-19 and the return to activities plan. So I'll bring that up real quick. So when you go to our website, I should have started from the beginning, but from the Special Olympic website, when you go to our main website webpage, you'll see the COVID-19 protocols for return to activities. You simply click on that banner right there, and it'll bring you up to our protocol updates for the return to activities. Within here, there's a lot of different information. Everything that we have, everything that we've sent out to programs and coaches and athletes, everything lies here. So you can see there's just important documents for everyone, health and wellness, fitness engagement. But most importantly for the coaches that are on this call, there will be video resources that pertain to coaches. We highly encourage you to look at those resources and look at the videos that are on there. Like I did mention, you'll see within the video resources at the bottom there, the Coach Return to Activities webinar is linked right there. So you can certainly click there and re-listen to the webinar. And here's the videos that we created for you, or the ones that were provided by SOI. Also within the coaches documents, coaches resources, you will see the important documents that we have. I want to show you this real quick with the Return to Activities Coaching Edition. We created this because the coaches, you're not going to go to practice with a 30-some page document. So we kind of condensed it down to really the information that coaches need to know all in one convenient little document there that you can print out and take with you to practice. So I encourage you to print that out. What I like about this is it has all the phases listed there. Talks about how many participants are allowed at a site, the high-risk individuals, when they can return to play, the competitions, all the fall sports that we're allowed to offer. So that's kind of a convenient little tool right there that you can use for the coaches. Most importantly, and we'll talk about this in a couple of seconds here, is the Flag Football Individual Skill Guide. which we can go over in a second. Well, we'll go over. Kathy gets the honor of going over the flag football individual skills. So I'll save that for you, Kathy.
Oh, yay. Steve, you could turn your mic on too.
So everything you need to know, the fact sheet for high-risk participants is on here. The BMI calculator that we talked about is on there. Risk assessment, the honor code, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. So I encourage you again to please visit the website. All the information is on there. We'll also have the FAQs up there for anything that changes or any questions that come up. We've been collecting questions from coaches, athletes, everyone. Once we start seeing a trend, we post them to our website under the FAQs. Additionally, anything that gets changed within the return plan, again, if you remember from the other night, we continually look at the return to activity plan and things that are in there. Obviously, things from the CDC are updated, it seems, daily. So anything that changes will live on this website as well. So I encourage you to look at that. All right, good. So it brought me right back here. All right, next thing I just want to talk about are some of the important highlights as related to the return to activities plan. One thing that we really want to stress, we want to make sure that everyone understands, is that your in-person returning to play is really truly optional. We know there's concern out there with returning athletes to practice, coaches returning to practice, the high-risk individuals not being allowed to practice in person at this time. So we really want you to understand that this is, the in-person is truly optional at this point. Secondly, the attendance at the training site, like I mentioned earlier, there's limits of 10 or 25 individuals. That includes everyone that is at your training site. It includes the athletes, unified partners, coaches, any additional volunteers, caregivers that may be there to assist one of the athletes. Any one-on-ones would be included within that, no more than 10. So when you're thinking about who's attending your practice, really during these phases, we shouldn't have any spectators on the sidelines or anything watching. Parents should be remaining in their cars just because of this limitation on how many people are allowed at a training site. And actually your COVID-19 coordinator, if you're the coach and you're a COVID-19 coordinator, you'll have to be responsible for this. But if you are fortunate enough to have a COVID-19 person with you at a practice, they should be supporting you and going through the process and making sure there's no more than 10 or 25 individuals at a training site. Also, because of COVID-19, as Michelle mentioned earlier, our coaches will not have to be certified this fall season. We also want to make it very clear that the at-home virtual training and competition is always available for those athletes that are not comfortable with returning to play, or coaches that are not comfortable with returning to play, or if they're not allowed to return to in-person activities because they potentially could be high risk. One thing we also want to make sure that we understand is that the risk assessment forms that every individual needs to complete before they can return to the practice field. So we'll make sure your COVID-19 person, COVID-19 person will be updated regularly of which athletes have completed those forms. So just be cognizant of, every athlete that attends your training site will need to complete that risk. It's actually called a COVID-19 participant code of conduct and risk assessment form, which is an electronic form that the athletes would complete either at home or they would bring their handwritten copy with you, and then the COVID-19 coordinator would add that information into the website for the athlete. Some coaching responsibilities as it relates to return to activity plan. Essentially, your COVID-19 coordinator should be responsible for educating the athletes ahead of time. But I think it's important for you as coaches to know what their signs and symptoms of COVID-19 are. In case any of your athletes shows any signs or symptoms of COVID-19 once they are on your training site and participating in practice. Again, as a reminder that athletes and coaches that are high risk are to remain at home during the fall season because of they're high risk, and we're not allowing high risk individuals to participate in person at this time. We want to ensure that the coaches, as well as the COVID-19 coordinator, are enforcing the rules about athletes wearing a mask. The only option not to wear a mask is if it physically, could harm the athlete. They also don't need to wear it during physical activity, but at all other times they should be wearing, and mandatory that they do wear those for PPE as well as the mask anytime they're not, physically moving around or it could harm them in any way. One thing that's very important to understand is that the athletes, we got to make sure that they bring their own water or their drinks, whatever that is. So the coaches, you won't be lugging around big heavy water jugs filled with ice and water because of potential for contamination. So please enforce that your athletes should be bringing their own water bottles to practice and really not sharing with anyone. Of course, we don't want them sharing with anyone. All the equipment that is being used should be used by that athlete themselves. There should be no sharing of equipment. With a football, one athlete may be holding a football and throw it to another athlete. We're not going to be allowed to do that during these first couple of phases. If that should happen, each of your training sites will be provided with disinfectant, and you can quickly spray it onto the ball and it'll disinfect it within a matter of minutes. So we just want to be careful that we're not, that athletes are not sharing their equipment. One thing that's going to be kind of difficult and challenging is to try to keep the athletes from shaking hands and doing fist bumps and high fives and everything like that, again, because we don't want any contact with any individuals. So we need to keep socially distanced of the 6 feet and everything. So that's going to be a difficult and challenging one, but just wanted to bring that to your attention to try to prevent that from occurring. One thing that we put together for our athletes is an athlete practice checklist. We did go over this with the athletes on our webinar that was this past Friday. Again, like I mentioned, your sites will be provided with hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes. So that should be at your practice site already. But the athletes should be required to bring their own face masks. Again, there will be additional face masks provided to the training site, but really the athletes should be bringing their own face mask. We talked about the water bottles already. Obviously bringing their sport equipment if they have any, or if they don't have any, then the training site will be providing that for them, provided that it is disinfected ahead of time. And bring their towels if they use one. It's recommended that we bring in hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes and all the other things that kind of go along with having practice. Especially now that it's 90-some degrees out there, let's make sure that they cover up and get some bug spray on. So that's an athlete checklist that we provided for the athletes. It's also on our website, so the athletes can go on there and print that for themselves as well. So virtual competition. So we know that there's no in-person competitions this fall. Fall sectionals and Fall Fest will be virtual. For sectionals this year, we are going to move it to one day, being Saturday, October 3rd. So again, all sectionals will be on the same day. We may run it over to 2 days. We're working with the committees now to see what the actual timeline of the event looks like. But for right now, it'll essentially be on that Saturday, October 3rd. I'll talk to you about the event information and the results in an upcoming slide. Again, Fall Fest will be virtual. It's going to be the same timeline, Friday to Sunday, November 6th and 8th. Again, both of these committees have been working hard behind the scenes, to create an awesome experience for the athletes. So we're looking forward to see what the event looks like. Competition. So what'll happen is the coaches will collect and submit to us preliminary scores for your athletes 3 weeks ahead of the competition. So for fall sectionals, your first rounds of scores will be, actually I don't have that. So your first round of scores will be the preliminary scores that you would turn in 3 weeks ahead of time. Kathy will show you in an upcoming slide what the submission form looks like as a guide that you can use for at practice to collect the scores. So for flag football, if you're at a practice, you'll be doing the scores with your athletes. You'll collect the scores from them. You'll turn them into your sport and competition director, and they'll submit it to us via a Google Doc. It's a normal process that we normally go through. And then from those scores, we'll division the athletes. Again, we'll division them by ability, age, and gender. I'll talk about the honor code on an upcoming slide, but I'll talk about the honor code next. And then the Monday prior to competition, whether it's the Monday before October 3rd or the Monday before Fall Fest for November 6th, again, you would you'll ask the athletes to go through the skills again. You'll collect their scores. Again, you'll submit them to your sport and competition director, which in turn will submit them to us for final scoring. So the same process is going to be used for fall sectionals as well as Fall Fest. So the honor code that we were just talking about, hopefully you heard it the other night, just to give you a quick recap. So we're not using the HER, I'm drawing a blank here, Michelle, honest effort rule. So we're not using the honest effort rule, but we created this honor code because of the virtual environment. Kind of how that relates to flag football, just to give you an example, whatever size football that you use for competition, you know, when they actually turn their scores in for the final competition, they're not going to use a smaller ball, right? Because that would give them an advantage. They may be able to throw the ball farther or whatever that looked like. So the honor code kind of lends some the integrity to the competition, that the athletes will be competing essentially on the same field, same environment, same ball, to keep everything fair. So we'll be submitting like the exact time, the distance or score, or other performance measures for each of the divisions. We'll follow all the virtual competition guidelines and standards as we'll provide for you. Again, we want to make sure that we keep all the deadlines. If something's, you know, not obviously, but the scores will be due the Monday prior to the event. And we'll need that information because it's a quick turnaround, especially for the final results. So for the awards, once you turn your scores in the Monday prior to the event, we'll enter them into GMS once again. And we'll see how they ended up in their division. Again, divisions will be based on those preliminary scores. We'll division every athlete, and then you'll submit your final scores. Again, we'll enter that in the GMS, and that's how we will be determining the awards. One thing that is different this year, I'm not sure if this affects, well, it does affect flag football for this year, but I'm not sure if it's different than what you've done in the past. But for our individual skills, each individual skill will be awarded. So the athletes will not have to compete in all three skills to be awarded. So each of the individual skills themselves will be awarded. One thing that's important and that's different than summer games is we're actually going to be awarding medals this year. So that's exciting for the athletes where they'll be competing and be getting awards this year. All right, next thing I'm going to bring up is the football sport guidance. Kathy, I'm not sure if you just want me to walk through this real quick, and then you can talk specifically about the individual sections.
There's not much that we really need to speak about until I would say about page 6. You've really covered everything up until that point.
Yeah. So,
and this, of course, is available on the website.
I was going to say I was going to say on the website under the sports offered section is where these guidances live. So you can go to your sport, look under flag football, and this will be on there. It's really just a guide about return to activities. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of it and some of the things that are included within there. So real quick, I'll just go through there. Talks about the phases again. Again, the coach's responsibilities that we talked about is on there.
And there's probably the first thing that we need to
okay.
Well, just to echo Bruce, of course, we want to let you know that in-person training is totally optional. And I realize too that some training sites are not going to train in person, not because they don't want to or they're uncomfortable, but like here in Bucks County, there are no venues that will allow us on their site. You know, the schools will not commit, the parks will not commit. So venues are an issue. How many coaches you have are an issue. And I don't want you to feel pressured into participating in person. A lot of the virtual competition is probably going to end up looking a little bit like the training skills that you're going to be seeing in this document. And what Bruce has pulled up now is the just an example of your practice plan. And I hope, you know, you all have been coaching, most of you, for years. And I'm sure that even if your practice plan does not look exactly like this with the same boxes and stuff, this is just an idea for you, something that you could use to set up your practice plan so that you know that each athlete is going to get their level of skill, whether it's skill 1, which is the least high functioning, skill 2, or skill 3. Everybody's going to come in, and here it says that you're going to come in a staggered schedule. And you know, I don't want you to think you got to necessarily put everybody on a 5-minute schedule coming in. You know that if you call a practice for 6:30 on a Wednesday evening, some athletes are going to come at 6:15 and some are going to come at 7:20. So they'll probably stagger themselves. The one suggestion that I heard that sounds really good, I think, is if you were to get some hula hoops, or, you know, some sort of markers, you know, spray paint if it's allowed, and get it out onto the field and spread them out with the 6 feet of distance as the athletes come in and get through their COVID-19 regimen, that they could go stand in their hula hoops, you know. One creative idea was to turn on some music, let them all have a dance party till enough of them get there for your coach to start warm-ups. And then once they start, you're going to notice that we're talking that these are all drills that don't include flags. This year for skills training, there aren't going to be any flags involved because there's just no way to keep that safe, keep them disinfected, keep them safe. That's just not going to work up. So they've got some recommended warm-ups here. And Bruce, you can go to the next page, I think. High knees, a lot of dynamic stretching. You know, if you've been to sports camp or you've been anywhere around Jen Tresp or Lauren Salter, a lot of people use like high knees as you're tromping towards the 50-yard line, to kind of getting that cardio and stretching working at the same time. There's additional drill examples. Again, I'm sure that many of you have so many drills already up your sleeves, warm-up drills. That's just a few more examples. And I'm thank you, Michelle. She's reminding me that you need to make sure as people come to your training site that you have a coach, and each training session needs a COVID designated coach. So there's a COVID director, there's a coach. And Neil, oh boy, he's really scrolling fast. Okay, I'll talk faster. So every athlete is going to have their own flag football or their own football. Generally, most of your athletes have their own football. So for many programs, this is not going to be an issue where you have to go buy 25 footballs. I would hope that you have some footballs and that other athletes can bring their footballs. We're on level 1, skill 1, throwing for distance. That means your 4 athletes, if you're one of the coaches, are going to line up 6 feet apart. You're going to let them throw for distance once. And then the athlete, after he throws for distance, is going to get the cardio of running to go get his football or her football and then they're going to come back and they're going to get it in the end of the line if you want to run it a few times. So everybody only touches their own football. One thing that I would suggest to you, and we'll see the chart at the, I have two computers, that's why I'm pointing over here. And we'll see the chart at the end of the drills here, but I think as a coach, I would be timing or writing down the distance of all of these drills as soon as I see an athlete, because under the circumstances, you don't know if that athlete's going to be able to come back the second week or the third week. And the sooner you can get a time or a distance for that athlete, I think the better.
Yeah, and I think I would just, Bruce, so what Bruce is showing you right now were some specific training drills that you can do that relate to each of these individual skills. So yeah, Kathy, if you're going to talk to each of them, I think it's better to talk with these diagrams here. Yeah. Good.
Very good. And Bruce, you passed one that we might just want to say something about. The long snap, that's not something that they've seen before. Some of the drills that you're going to be seeing in here are also you're going to be seeing at a sports camp that starts on August the 10th. So you'll see that in person. The long snap is a drill that you would be standing this 5.5 feet, 5.5 feet away from a wall or something that you could put a mark on with a piece of chalk. And, you know, when we first started flag football, we handed the ball through the legs of the center to the quarterback. That's how everybody was trained from the initial trainer that came up from Tennessee. And, you know, we've evolved into a longer snap. At 5.5 feet is nothing for like Alan's team or Steve's team. It might be a little bit difficult for some of the others, but that's the one that you've not seen before. This is, these are all the different drills, and I think they're explained pretty well that you could be running in stations for your two groups of four. So I think, and on handoffs, you know, you're going to be setting a stool right there where it says QB is where you're going to put your little like a stool or garbage can, and the athlete would pick the football up off of that and run for, and well, this is the throwing for distance, would stand, this is just throwing for distance, so you can keep rolling.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Now on the agility, at the start on the agility and speed is where you would have your trash can or your stool or something that the athlete is going to pick his or her own football up off of and then do the agility drill, and you're going to be timing that. And there's just a little bit of a better picture about that snap if you can picture that that's up against a wall. And there's the control
Level 2.
passing for throw for level 2. Level 2 would be the slightly higher functioning or higher functioning athletes in your group. So you can see you're gonna need to measure. You're gonna need to get there early enough to measure some of these things out and get them set up in a couple of stations. And here's your chart where you're going to be keeping either the times or the distances for your athletes. And I don't think at this point that the athletes have any requirement on how many practices they have to attend. Is that true, Michelle? It used to be they had to have 8 practices in order to be able to compete.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. That is true. So clearly we would like regular participation, but again, understand that we need to be flexible this year. So
Right.
Everyone, in order to, they'll need at least 2 scores. So again, you'll have to, for competition, you'll have to submit an entry score and then a final score. So they would have need to shown up, and ideally it's over a period of time, you know, not they came the first 2 weeks, here are their scores. But, you know, here's kind of where they started in the beginning of the season, and then 3-4 weeks later, you know, here's where kind of how they improved. So that's the thought behind it. But again, I think flexibility is the key word this year.
Absolutely. And I think too that, you know, as coaches too, we try to to make it fun for our athletes, because obviously our athletes want to play football. Maybe they don't really want to just come and spend time doing skills. But like in Bucks, one of the things that we do, and our athletes love it, is after the agility drill, we'll have one of the coaches standing there with the whistle blowing a touchdown when they pass that end point. And then they get to do their touchdown dance, and all their friends are cheering for them and, giggling about how silly just little things like that can really add a lot to a practice that might seem a little dry because it's drills.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
So this will be the last slide, and I promise to get through it pretty quickly. But one thing that that I want to alert you to is the return to activities plan that we currently put out was for in-person training, but now we are focusing on the at-home training and virtual training. Like, what does that look like? Since we're finding out that we may be limited on the amount of teams that are returning to practice. So one thing that we're looking at is the at-home virtual sport-specific trainings and competitions. What Kathy just went over was kind of the in-person trainings and how that will occur at your training site. But we're also going to look at adaptations that you can make with your athletes to perform the same skills and to be able to participate competitively as well. So what does that look like? We're not sure yet, but we will be rolling something out so that way the individuals that cannot return to in-person can still be able to train at home and compete virtually. So we'll be adapting like the level 1 and level 2 skills, using things that they can find at their homes, or you as coaches. Fortunately for you, Kathy, I mean, you mentioned that a lot of the athletes will have their own they'll have their own footballs, so that would be fortunate for you guys. But if they don't, we're able to give them some footballs, and you're able to instruct them on how to do the competitions and the skills at home. And then you would just collect their scores virtually, turn them in. We would probably division them at home division as well as like the in-person training division, separate them that way. The other thing that we're looking at with SOI is rolling out a fitness, what is it called? A virtual fitness as a sport program. Right now, they're still working through those phases, still working through the process to see what those at-home virtual offerings would be. Those offerings would not be sport-specific, so you'll essentially have 2 separate options that could occur virtually, whether it's the virtual sport-specific training or it's going to be the virtual fitness offerings. I guess, I mean, I wasn't here long enough, but I heard at one time they had the National Distance Challenge. They're looking to bring that back as well, potentially as one of the fitness options. And they're working on, again, like different fitness options, whether it's kind of not a decathlon, but like a potential menu for like 12 different activities that you can do at home, and the athletes will pick 7. So those things will be coming out that we're working on right now. We look to have them rolling out by mid-August. So fret not that the athletes that cannot return to in-person training, we will be providing something that's meaningful for the athletes as well as the coaches, and an opportunity to compete as well. So before we get to the questions, hopefully you can bear with me for 1 second. We'll do another quick poll. If I can get to it. Let's see if I can get to the second poll. I'm going to try it right now. I'm not seeing the second poll, Michelle. Stop share results.
Click out of it, Bruce. I'll see if I can pull it up.
Do that. Yeah, it won't let me do it.
Did you click out of it?
Yeah, it's still the same poll.
Just X out the polls. I'll see if I can pull it up.
Where's the poll at? I don't have it up.
Oh, okay. It tells me I can't go in because someone else is in there. All right, that's okay.
We all want to know, what was the question?
Alan said he saw the poll. That's so funny.
Now he saw the poll, right? Yeah, it says poll is
Um,
closed. Wait,
So,
poll
geez,
two.
I wrote. Oh, there you go. You got it. I'm like, I wrote the questions. I don't even know what they were.
All right, let's try this. Hopefully you can see these. It says that you can see them. Can you guys see them?
Oh, yeah, we can see it.
Kathy, okay. Would you be interested? Here's the poll. Would you be interested in leading at-home virtual training and competition with your team? So again, this is virtual at home. Would you be interested in leading at-home virtual training and competition with your team? Yes, no, or I would prefer in person. That is that one. We're starting to get some responses, so it's looking good. The second one, would you prefer the virtual at-home training option to be specific to your sport or fitness focused? Sport specific is leading in the bottom. It's like watching a horse race. You see, like, everything's going up a little bit. It looks like we have the same amount as last time, so I'm going to end the polling, see if I can share it with you. Share results. Would you be interested in leading an at-home virtual training and competition with your team? Michelle, 50% yes, with 4, and then 50% I would prefer in person. Second one, would you prefer a virtual at-home training option to be specific to your sport or fitness focused? 5 said sport specific, 1 fitness focus, or 2, I would do both.
Yeah, that's great. So the good thing with the virtual trainings is they will be able to do both. So people will be able to compete virtually in the fitness as a sport model as well as a sport specific virtual model or in-person model. So even if you have some of your athletes doing in person, maybe they can come together as a team virtually,
Yeah.
you know, with some of those people that might be high risk and do fitness as a sport together as a team. So we're just, again, we're trying to provide options. We really focused initially on this in-person rollout because we wanted that to be an August 1 start date. So we're a little bit behind on just pulling together some of these sport-specific offerings, but want you to know that they're coming.
So it's 8:03. We did run a little over, so I'm sorry about that, but I appreciate you allowing us the opportunity to test out the poll and talk through this process. Michelle, do you think there's anything within the group chat that needs to be reiterated? It looks like everything is really answered in there.
Yeah, so I did go ahead and answer. I don't know if some people were following me. I think the one good question, just as far as high risk, individuals from group homes do fall into that high risk category. We're just following guidance from the CDC. There is more information on our website where you can actually look up each of those individual group homes. They're technically, by the CDC, considered personal care facilities, or there's another term for them too that's escaping me right now. But there's a whole list. There's a link to a list. You can go, you can kind of type in some of those group homes that your athletes might be coming from to see if they fall within those restrictions. And if you have any questions, again, you can please reach out to myself. Right now, Chelsea Hamill is our SOPA COVID-19 coordinator. So she's managing a lot of those things, but again, feel free to reach out to myself or Bruce and we can send those questions kind of to the best person. But not too many sports specific stuff. So, I mean, and again, feel free to unmute yourselves. We'll hang on for a little bit if you guys have any questions that you'd like to go ahead and ask.
Everything was covered. Everything was covered so well.
Not too much coming in, yeah. So, yeah, I think it's great. I mean, thanks for being on tonight. This season is definitely going to look a lot different. I think, like everything, right? School's going to look a lot different. Work looks a lot different. I think it's just adjusting and just trying to keep your athletes engaged, as we talked about a little bit in the beginning. And I think, keeping that group together as much as possible. And that's what I said, just trying to figure out kind of what works best within the environment for you. It's going to be different for everybody. So we're here as a resource, so don't hesitate to reach out. But thanks all so much for joining. And again, we will hang on for a few minutes if anybody wants to ask anything. But thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks.
that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Take
Thanks,
care.
guys. Thanks, Steve.
No.